authorities in Cape Town are calling for calm after 2 tremors were felt in parts of the city this weekend. The U.S. Geological Survey detected a 6.4 magnitude earthquake about 1,600 kilometers from the southeast coast of the country, but it says there is no threat of a tsunami. Now, South Africa's biggest earthquake, in fact, hit parts of Cape Town around this time on the 29th of September. That was more than 50 years ago in 1969. The series Tilburg earthquake led to the South African National Seismograph Network being set up to monitor earthquakes. Now, Professor Ray Durrheim was a teenager when he, in fact, witnessed that deadly quake. He joins us now via our video link. And, Prof, I don't want to give anything away. Tell us about, ironically, how you've now gotten into this industry. You're now research chair in seismology. Tell us what happened on that day in 1969.
Well, I remember it pretty well. I was a teenager. I was 13 years old. We were living in the southern suburbs of Cape Town, and the house started to shake quite violently. And of course, we were alarmed and we ran outside, as many of our neighbors had, and the shaking continued for a few tens of seconds. And then shortly after that, the news started to break that there had been a strong earthquake, as you said, in the series Tilburg earthquake, that some of the dwellings had collapsed, people had been trapped, and some people had been killed. And that was headline news in the Cape newspapers for the next couple of weeks. And yeah, so that I remember very clearly. And I just guess as my life continued, as I finished high school and went to university, I had an interest in the dramatic phenomena in nature, like earthquakes and volcanoes, and that's the course that my career took.
Incredible story. At the time, Prof, was that an unusual occurrence in that part of the world?
Well, it was certainly unusual in that it didn't. These kind of events don't happen often in a lifetime.
Yeah.
But there certainly has been a record back in 1809. There was a strong earthquake in Cape Town that caused quite a lot of damage to the city at that time. And there's a very well-written account by a military officer called von Bochenruder, who happened to be in Cape Town at the time, and he described it and was published in a scientific journal at that time. And also a few years later, in 1811, there was a naturalist called Burchell, happened to be traveling through the Cape looking for zoological specimens, and he experienced a strong earthquake, which he also described in his journals. So these events are known to occur in that region occasionally, perhaps every few decades, and so it's certainly not unknown, but not well known in this time span of the human life.
Yeah, so I'm reading that the quake that shook some areas of Cape Town over the weekend, 6.2, I'm also reading another report of 6.4 magnitude quake. Prof, perhaps for those of us who are not in the industry, what is an earthquake?
Well, at first you mentioned these earthquakes magnitudes bigger than 6, and that earthquake took place a long way from Cape Town, 1,600 kilometers. So that particular earthquake would not have been, in fact, sensed in Cape Town. It's very important to distinguish that. What happened was a lot smaller local earthquake with a magnitude of about 2.5. Now, the difference in energy released is enormous. It's a few thousand times difference. But but it's just a coincidence that those two happened at much the same time.
Okay.
But generally, the Earth's crust it's a bit like a creaking ship at sea. It's as the Earth is evolving, as the oceans are widening, as continents are moving, the Earth's crust creaks and cracks. And energy gets stored up inside the rock, and from time to time, there's a rupture that's large enough to release sufficient energy that it's felt on the surface of the Earth, that people sense it. And occasionally, it's strong enough, the shaking is strong enough to cause damage to buildings, and can even, in the case of great earthquakes, cause tremendous loss of life and damage.
So, large earthquakes, Professor Durrheim, are relatively rare in Africa. We're told, you've told us about at least 2 that have happened in the past more than 50 years or so, just in the Cape Town region. But what makes us on this continent less susceptible to earthquakes?
Yeah. We happen to be in southern Africa, a long way from what we call the boundaries of these tectonic plates that make up the surface of the Earth. That's not true for all of Africa. In fact, we've got something called the East African Rift, which propagates down from the Red Sea and through countries like Ethiopia and Kenya and Tanzania and Malawi. And there it's a very active region, and large earthquakes happen bigger than magnitude 6, large enough to cause damage perhaps every year or two. But here in southern Africa, we just happen to be beyond the tip of the East African Rift. It branches off through Mozambique and into Botswana, so that we only occasionally feel earthquakes bigger than magnitude 6. And normally magnitude 5.5 or 6 is the point at which damage starts to occur. But certainly in the last century, there have been something like half a dozen, 6 or 7 earthquakes bigger than magnitude 6 in southern Africa that have caused alarm and some damage to buildings. And in the case of the Ceres Toolbuffer earthquake, some loss of life.
Yeah. So for this one that happened 600 kilometers off the southeast coast, no tsunami warning issued. But if we were to find ourselves in a situation where we do feel a tremor of that nature, 6.2, not these smaller tremors that were reported around Cape Town in the aftermath of that earthquake, what do you do? What do you do in that scenario?
Well, the rules is that you mustn't rush madly outside the building, because then you are more likely to be injured in the panic, or by falling masonry, or by shattered glass. And so the earthquake drill, and this is what, if you are a child in a school in Japan or California, what you will be taught to do is that you drop to the floor, you creep under hopefully a table, you cover, and you hold on, because during the shaking that will occur, which could last for 20 or 30 seconds, the table could move, so you make sure that you're under cover, so that if the roof collapses or anything falls from the ceiling, it doesn't hit you on your head. And then you wait until things settle down, and then you cautiously make your way out. You help people that you can help and move out of doors. So that is the drill. And this is something that really we should, in many of our schools, we do have fire drills. We should also be doing a bit of earthquake awareness as well, so that there is not a panic when something like this happens.
Yeah.
There is a possibility something like this could happen in Cape Town, or in fact anywhere in South Africa.
So fight your natural urge to run about looking for cover. Stay calm. Professor, thanks very much for your help. Thanks for giving us some insights here on the AM Report on this Monday morning. That's Professor Ray Durrheim, who is SA Chair in Exploration, Earthquake and Mining Seismology. That's 600 kilometers, or rather, it was located 1,600 kilometers off the southeast coast of the country, that earthquake that happened over the weekend. Some tremors felt in the rest of Cape Town.